Hi everybody, Michael here, Way of the Logos UK. Now, thanks to all the new subscribers who subscribed yesterday after one of my videos got a bit more traction than normal, so welcome. And I thought this would be a good time for me to explain what is the Way of the Logos all about. Now, the Way of the Logos is the way of the Spirit, and the Logos is represented by Spirit Christ, and that connects us to the Father God. And the problem with our world today is everybody thinks we can solve our problems through these things, essentially. So instead of following the way of the Logos and relying on God and His Spirit to solve our problems, we are following the way of man. And the way of man is the flesh and the ego nature. See, we are more than just physical beings. We are literally a spiritual being encased in a physical body. And this is what all great spiritual traditions go on about. And to clarify, I am not a Christian, but I am a follower of Christ through the Spirit and through the Logos, which has been present since the beginning and dawn of time. And with that being said, we need to follow the way of the Logos rather than the way of man. Now, how do we follow the way of man in our current society? As I said, we rely on politics, we rely on finance, and we rely on religion. And these things are keeping us stuck following the way of the ego and the way of man. And in I suppose Christian terms, they say we're deceived by Satan. Well, really, it's just that you have a spiritual nature represented by the Logos in Christ. And in creation, we have opposites. So you have summer, you have winter, you have up, you have down, you have hot, you have cold. And in this realm, you need the opposite of the Spirit of Christ. So you have Satan. And Satan's job is not a rival of God, because God has no rival. But Satan's job is to do the opposite of what Christ does. So Christ pulls us to God. Satan pulls us away from God. It's just the way that things were set up. In many ways, if you look at the Old Testament, Job, when Satan came into it, Satan was a servant and playing a role for God. That's how they actually see it in Judaism. It was only Christianity came along and created this thing about, rebelling from heaven and thrown out of heaven to earth. Makes no story. Well, it makes no sense, because if you think of it, why didn't God just send Satan straight into the lake of fire? And then he wouldn't need to torment his people. Because Christianity is basically false, essentially. Christ taught the truth, but Christianity and church leaders made up their own religion, essentially. And as you can see, religion is part of the problem. And I'm going to go back and forth on certain things, but you'll get the idea as I go through. So, as I said, people rely on religion, and mainly the Abrahamic faiths. They're the biggest religions in the world. Judaism is a small religion that's not really relevant in terms of the numbers. And it's generally a religion that wants to keep to itself, despite what all the theorists will tell you. They don't understand what Judaism is. They've got into a load of theories. And then you have Christianity and Islam. Now, the problem with Christianity and Islam is they're just dogmatic beliefs. And as I said previously, a lot of it is written by men and made up by church leaders and false prophets. And there's no spiritual transcendent to it. Christ said you must be born again of the Spirit. He didn't say, worship me and say that I died for your sins. That was written by men. And the problem is, to get into the kingdom of heaven, as Christ said to the religious leaders back then, and as I and anybody who's born again truly in the Spirit of Christ say to the religious leaders now, you are not in the kingdom of heaven. And not only that, you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, because all they teach is dogma. But to enter the kingdom of heaven is to do spiritual work, which is fasting, long-term fasting if necessary, lots of meditation, and lots of spiritual work, and intellectually understanding what they mean. But most of all is sitting still in silence, and when you fast, you release the bonds of the flesh. This is why Christ fasted for 40 days, to release the bonds of the flesh and get close to the Spirit. And then once you realise you are a spirit and you're in touch with that, that's connected to God, that's true transcendent. It's like going from a caterpillar to a butterfly. That's what humans need to do. We need to go from men to spirit. And that's what the true meaning of resurrection is. But religion keeps us stuck in this. If you see, I've divided it into two. The way of the Logos, which is how we solve our problems. But everybody's stuck in this paradigm. We're stuck in religion. So we rely on religion. We need to return to Christianity. That's not going to solve our problems. We rely on finance. I'm talking about everybody thinks that money is going to solve all our problems. If we fix the economy and we look to all the financial institutions, but that's not going to solve our problems. And we looked at politics. This is the main one. Everybody's obsessed with politics. Now, I'm not saying none of these are important. What I'm saying is we need to focus on this. We need to focus on the way of the Logos. And politics especially keeps us divided. You know, communism, capitalism, all these theories people have. Are you centre-right? Are you hardcore nationalist? Are you a civic nationalist? Are you an ethno-nationalist? It's just people arguing over their egotistical idea of how they believe society should be. But ultimately, if it doesn't have any spiritual infusion that's of the transcendent, because this is above the below, Jesus said, you are from beneath the world, I am from above. He was not talking about heaven in the sky. He was talking about a spiritual reality that he was in. He was in the spirit. And people would say to me, well, you talk about this transcendent, but that's all just hocus pocus. How can you structure a society just by talking about transcendence? Well, this is how you would structure it. And this is how in the traditional societies they structured it. And that's what traditionalism is. It is, instead of relying on religion, you rely on spirit. And I'm talking about a spiritual reality. So I live through the spirit. I don't believe in the Bible and listen to preachers. I live by the spirit. And that's hard to understand. As Jesus said, casting pearls before swine. Spiritual wisdom can't be understood through the intellect. It can only be understood by existential experience of it. So I would say to people, don't believe anything. Go and do spiritual work yourself. Go and start working your way up to a long-term fast and meditating half an hour in the morning, half hour at night. And you'll awaken your spirit and you'll see the truth. So there's nothing I can say to you. All I can do is tell you what to do. You know, it's like, I'm skinny, 10 stone. Now, if I went to a personal trainer, I say, I guarantee you, give me a year, I could get you to 12 stone. And I'm saying, it's impossible, I don't believe it. The trainer would say, follow my instructions and you'll see for yourself. You know, eat this amount of calories, do these workouts, and no doubt in a year's time, you can be 12 stone if you want to. And I'm saying spiritually, fast a lot, meditate morning and night, and eventually you will awaken the spirit and see the truth yourself. And back to how we would structure the society. So we would live by the spirit, and instead of the finance and the merchants running society, along with the puppet politicians, the elders, so you'd have a council of elders, and the warriors, they would run society. And this is how, a great example I like to use is Gladiator, the film, because the elder was Marcus Aurelius, the wise elder, and the warrior was Maximus. So they ran society. And when you have wise spiritual leaders running society that know God and represent God, the light of God will come down through the elders. And when there's problems, the spiritual warriors, such as Maximus and Gladiator, would enforce the spiritual values. The problem we have, we're in darkness, so we have finance running it, which is merchant and greed. And then you have politicians and other sort of entities, influencers and all that, who sell out to the finance because they're living by the ways of the flesh. So they can be corrupted by money or sex, like Epstein. You know, you have sex operations. And this is why we struggle. Now, if we lived in this society, let me give you an example. With the grooming gangs in the UK, if you had elders and warriors, let's say that I'm an elder on a council of elders. I'm like, okay, so this community are abusing our young women. How am I going to deal with that? I'd go and get my warriors, send them into the town and say, deal with it, make sure that this never happens again. I wouldn't be tipping and tapping around with playing politics when young girls are being abused. I'd send in the warriors to deal with the problem. And I think it's very pertinent that this week, Donald Trump, love him or hate him, you know, he does some good things, some bad things. But ultimately, he has realised that everybody's playing these politics games. He realises force. You know, he says, well, I'm going to go and take Greenland. What are you going to do about it? And there's nothing they can really do about it. He can just bypass all these pathetic politicians like Starmer and all that, and all the financial people at Davos who are not happy with him because he's taking Greenland. But what can they do? What would the grooming gangs be able to do if the elders instructed military warriors to go and deal with them? There's nothing they can do. Nothing they would be able to do. And that's how you'd protect society, because you'd have the love of God at the head. And to get to the love of God, you have to follow the way of the Logos, or the way of Christ. And then the elders who are living by the Spirit would set the values of society. You know, honour, dignity, respect, rather than money, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that rubbish. And the warriors would enforce the elders' plans. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why I believe everybody's stuck down here. You're from beneath. You're stuck worrying about politics. And people always come onto my channel, because I've got another YouTube channel as well. I've been doing sort of activism online for 15 years. And everyone wants to argue about, oh, religion, oh, this is a problem with Christianity and Islam. No, we need Christian revival. And we need to sort out the financial system and deal with the money. Or we need communism, capitalism, nationalism, ethno-nationalism and all this stuff. But you're stuck down here. And we're not going to solve our problems stuck down here. We need to follow the way of the Logos, to transcend the bottom and get to the top. And to finish the point that I was making as well, about how to structure society. I've done a playlist. I've already done 2 videos, so go and check it out. One is the economy. So you have main parts of society. You have the economy, you have the health sector, you have the migration sector, you'll have education. And the elders would structure this society. So I've already done 2 videos. One about a remigration plan done with heart that's going to benefit the British people and, as I said, be with heart for the migrants, not just deport everybody, stupid stuff like that. But it's a wise plan that would work, a remigration plan. And I've also done a video on how to structure the economy, about getting rid of usury, getting rid of interest. And through my structuring the economy, mortgage payments would go down by something like 65%. So check out those videos. I'm also going to do a video of how we can restructure the education system. Because if you look at the moment, every kid really hates going to school. It's boring, it's dead, it's soulless. And I know lots of teachers, and online I look at the videos of what teachers are saying. They hate their job. So you can tell our society is sick when teachers hate going to school to teach and students hate going to school to get taught. So you know something's incredibly wrong. If we structure society correct, I love teaching people. I'm doing this now. I love teaching. I love doing YouTube videos teaching people what I've learned in 15 years on the spiritual path. And especially young people, I love to teach them. And some young people are enthused and they hear something that's motivational and inspirational rather than demoralizing. So it's a joyful thing. And teachers and students should wake up every day, look forward to going to school. Sunday evening shouldn't be sitting there in trepidation. Oh, God, I've got to go to school tomorrow. I've got to go to work. They should be sitting there like, yes, I'm going back to school. School holidays should come around and the kids should be like, oh, I want to go to school. That's how good education should be. And if it was structured spiritually, not soulless, league tables and all that stuff, and treating kids as individuals. Some kids are more athletic. Some kids are good at maths. Some kids are good at English. Some kids are introverts. Some kids are extroverts. Everybody needs to be allowed to grow in their own way, respected as an individual soul and as a child of God, not as a cog in a financial system made by man and merchants and puppet dumbass politicians. So we need to follow God, Christ, elders, and we've got the big dogs to back us up. Boosh, not me, if there's any troubles. And that's what the way of the Logos is all about. Okay, so I'm not going to whittle on too much more. That's just an example of my vision for the future. And this is just a taster. If you stay subscribed, there'll be more coming. As I said, check the checklist or the playlist that I put on about the finance system and about a migration system. I'll be doing a video on education and health and how not to rely on the state, rely on yourself and take personal responsibility, and also how we can restructure religion. To finish, just briefly, I would keep religion, but I would put the elders, I would quite happily stop Way of the Logos and take over the Church of England. So because we've got all the churches, but I would bring back the mystic side of Christianity, what Jesus Christ truly taught, which was the love of the Father and the love of the Spirit, and getting the Spirit to be a living reality, not just stuck in listen to some preacher talking about the Bible. And then you had the Archbishop of Canterbury, the old guy, who was useless, very corrupt maybe, promoting globalist agenda when he should be promoting the Spirit of Christ. And people who have problems could go to their local church rather than mental health and psychologists who are part of the system that's corrupt. If they had problems, they can go to their religious, but they wouldn't be religious, they would be a mystic pastor and priest who has the love of God in them, and they would be able to help them with from above. They'll be helping them with the power of the Logos and the love of God, not from the corruption of man. You're not going to get help from psychologists and all that who have been trained within the system. Okay? So that's the point of my video today. As I said, thanks to all the new subscribers. Stay tuned because it'll make more sense as time goes on. And thanks for your support. Please like this video if you like it. Share it with as many people as you can to get this message out here, because nobody else is speaking about this other than maybe Richard IV, who does some good videos on these subjects that I believe is the only other person truly speaking about this sort of stuff. Okay, so share, like, subscribe. God bless everybody today. Goodbye.